Well, we have Jason Perro on the line. Jason, thank you so much for being on the show. And we got a lot to cover here today. So I'm just going to throw it right to you right off the bat and have you introduce yourself to our listeners.
All right. Thanks for having me, Jack. I'm really happy to be here today and appreciate what you do. You have a great show, and I think that people get a lot of value out of it. My name is Jason Perro, born and raised near Erie, Pennsylvania. My wife and I have been buying real estate for almost 20 years. So since 2001, actually closed our first property a week before 9/11. And we started out with small properties like duplexes, single family homes, and currently have 900 units that we own. We've owned 600, syndicated 300. We closing on another 130 in the next month, so that'll put us over 1,000 units, all in our own market. So again, a good portion of what we own is just my wife and I, no partners, and then we've syndicated and joint ventured some property as well for the remainder.
So you've been in this business now for 20 years. You've with 9/11 and 2008 and everything, and now we have the topic on everybody's mind is the coronavirus and the uncertainty of what's going on in the stock market. With your experience, what do you think? Like, should we all be panicking? Like, it seems like we better all run out and get that toilet paper and hunker down and not buy anything right now, right?
No, I mean, we talked about this a little bit in the pre-interview conversation that, sometimes the nation just needs something to panic about. I listened to a podcast the other day with an infectious disease expert that's internationally known, and he's on the Joe Rogan podcast. And his name was Michael. I can't remember.
Yeah, I listened to that one too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he had said something about in terms of freaking out. On a scale of 1 to 10, on 1 being like you don't care, and a 10 being like, oh my God, the world's falling. Like, be aware, be vigilant, maybe be at a 4 or a 5. I mean, if you get sick, don't go and get other people sick. Like, don't, this might be a good time to like really notice how much we don't wash our hands, and that during any flu season. And this sounds like it's pretty bad. I mean, it sounds like, there are people dying and there's people that are going to get sick and not get better, but, that's not a reason to panic. It could be really bad, but the good news is the majority of most people will recover, and it's sort of a short-term disruption to our life. But, going back, we bought our first property. We closed a week before 9/11, but kept buying property. 2008 came and went, and that was a tremendous opportunity to buy distressed and undervalued property. And just all sorts of cycles. We've been through Republican administrations, Democratic administrations, and honestly, I think you just have to adapt. I mean, things are going to always change, and there's always going to be our way of life changing and how we do things. But I'll give you an example of sort of at least why I'm still bullish on real estate. Mm-hmm. We have an offering that we're putting out. I have 127 units in Erie, Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from. That we're putting an offering out on, and just finishing up the offering memorandum. So sent a little teaser email this morning at 9:30 to all of our previous or current investors and said, hey, look, we're going to let you get first dibs at it. We'll send out the OM either tonight or tomorrow, but here's the process. If you want to give us a soft commitment, we need that by Monday, because by Monday afternoon, we're going to be sending out, we're going to be talking to our newer investors. And we need to raise $2.2 million. And by noon, we had already gotten $1.3 million in soft commitments. Mm-hmm. So without anybody seeing the OM. So I think, sometimes if you do a good job at educating your investors, if you're in say syndicating, and these are people that are accredited and some just sophisticated investors, they understand the long-term view of investing. And I think when things are really uncertain, if you've done your job well, you've educated them about the stability of real estate and what it really does long-term. So I think that, people can you can be cautious, you can be aware of what's going on around you, but don't panic, don't freak out. Maybe take advantage of some good buys in the stock market right now. I'm not personally in the stock market, but, just take care of your neighbors. I mean, if somebody does get sick, be a good person, but, and don't be a jerk. If you do get sick, leave the house, but don't freak out.
Right. Yeah, no, it's, it's top of mind, and I thought we should broach
Yeah.
that subject, especially when I know that you place a lot of focus on that work-life balance.
Yeah.
We I think we have a tendency of romanticizing the grind and getting in front of things, and it's all about burning cycles. Um, and in the end, we have this scare going on right now, but we're into real estate and investing to provide a better life for our friends or for our family.
Yeah.
And I think we sometimes lose sight of that, and remember and remind ourselves to take a moment and enjoy that time with your family. So what recommendations or advice do you have there?
As far as taking a work-life balance and
Yeah.
not burning a candle on both ends, I think, well, it'll be interesting. There'll be a lot of people that are forced into that lifestyle right now where they have to work from home. Schools are shutting down. My high schooler is going to have to, they're going to do school remotely, at least through the end of the month, starting next week, just in an overabundance of caution. And I think sometimes, I was very guilty of this early on. I would just work, grind all hours of the day and not really pay attention to what's important, your relationships, your friendships, your health. And so I think that should always be top of mind. So it's hard though when you're trying to grind and achieve this goal of whatever it is, building a portfolio, maybe getting enough income to leave a day job, or just grow, just excel in business. But at the end of the day, that can all be taken away. I mean, say God forbid you're somebody that gets sick from this coronavirus and doesn't recover, right? Life can be taken away at any time. So don't take that kind of stuff for granted, because if you bust your tail and then your spouse or better half leaves you because you're not around, or your kids hate you because they don't know who you are because you're working 20 hours a day.
Right.
And you got to balance that stuff out and see what's really important. I mean, a lot of times we'll say, hey, I'm working hard so I can build this dream for my family. But if you leave them behind, they don't really, they're not going to appreciate all that hard work unless you give yourself to it. It doesn't take, you don't have to give 20 hours of your time a day to your spouse or your best friends or your kids, but you have to be present. So when you are with them, 15 minutes of quality time is better than 3 hours of just sitting in front of your phone, like checking Facebook or whatever you do.
Right.
Just the time.
Right. Yeah, no, it's funny you bring up Facebook, because I suppose it's been well over a year or so now. I just started shutting off the notifications to those social networks because, frankly, there isn't a notification that I receive on those services that need my immediate attention.
Right.
So it'll wait when I get around to it.
Well, that's the funny thing, people get so, this is a little bit of a tangent, but you can get so fed up with the news because it's the same thing all day, every day. So they'll get their news from Facebook, but it's the same thing. and I don't know that either is like super healthy. And there was something that one of my mentors in businesses said to me, and he said it on his various books and things like that, but putting yourself on a news diet. So, I mean, I even found myself the other night, the NBA shuts down. I'm a huge NBA fan. I'm like sitting there on the couch. I started freaking out, and I have a heart condition. So I'm like, oh, I got to pre-exist, so you go down this rabbit hole of nonsense. And I remembered, I'm like, you know what, you should put yourself on a 10 to 15 minute news diet a day. And what's really important will come to you, and you need to be aware of what's happening in the world. But at the same time, you're going to miss everything else, all the goodness that's going on, and miss the big picture. So I think we've all been inundated with this coronavirus thing that I think if you paid attention for 5 minutes, you know what to do to prepare yourself. You know enough not to be freaked out, or if you have symptoms, what you should have to go to the hospital. But if all you're doing is watching Fox or CNN or whatever it is, and you're going to be freaked out, and you either think nothing's going on or you think the world's falling. Just
Right.
detach from Facebook for a bit, detach from cable TV for a bit, and just live your life, and be surprised sometimes at the magic that occurs when you can like walk away. And look, I'm first to admit that I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I go down that Facebook rabbit hole, and you're commenting on friends' posts, and it's mindless, and it doesn't really like do much for, at least for me, it doesn't do much for my business at all. So it's just a time waste. So.
Sure. So is this kind of the strategies as your business obviously has been growing over the past 20 years? Do you find that you've had to really enforce or take your own advice when it comes to news consumption and social media involvement? And
Yeah, I do, and I struggle with it at times, but I really, I really try to detach as much as I can. I'll read the newspaper more often because I can get I can get the news, or I'll go online, to like, real news sites, not not Facebook or some opinion site. I just want to see what's happening in the world, see what's happening in my area, and I can read an article. But the challenge with a lot of cable news, and I'm not picking on anyone or anything. I'm pretty neutral here, but tell me what's going on, and then we're going to get opinions from like 20 different people that aren't, they claim to be experts, but that's the stuff that gets you wound up, and then you're detached from your family relationships, your friendships, or it's just all these things are maybe not important to you living your life and achieving your goals and dreams, and so I just try to work. I've tried to take the advice that some of my mentors and people I look up to in businesses who said to me about, limit the distractions. You don't have to have your nose to the grindstone at all day long, but you can rot your brain with it's true, with certain content, or just being in front of a screen all day long. And so, try to make more human interaction as opposed to online interaction. And, try to, some people are news junkies. My wife's one of them. I have friends that are, but for me, I just, like I said the other night, 10 minutes of news and I'm stuck watching the NBA shut down, and I'm start panicking, and then I catch myself. And so I think sometimes it's hard, because we're all humans, and I'm certainly not perfect, but, I think that helps when you're trying to grow and scale a business, is focus on your mindset, focus on, kind of your inner zen and inner peace. And those are the things that are going to get you through the ups, the downs, and the in-betweens.
Sure. Well, as your business is growing too, I can imagine that there's a lot more things to do. Your time is pretty constant. It's not going to ebb and flow. How have you managed to scale? Have you been adding to your team? What have you done there to ensure you maintain your work-life balance?
Yeah, that was it's a great question, because that is hard. It was very hard for me early on. I felt like I needed to take, too much control in certain areas of the business. There's a saying, and I still believe it, that sometimes, no one will ever care as much as the owner, or they'll never do it. Right. Sometimes they won't do it as well as the owner, but you have to trust other people. You have to find those people that can do certain things better than you. And it's hard, when you're running a small business or a medium-sized business, every dollar counts. But I've learned to have faith in hiring ahead, that, if I make that investment in people, that it's going to free me up to do what really counts. Maybe that's making deals, raising money, like working on my business instead of in the business. And so I've really tried to look at my hiring and scaling the business as an investment, but it's given me back a ton of free time. So I was sharing this with one of my good friends the other day, that, we were just in Mexico for a week in mid-February, and our vacations over the years, it's gotten progressively easier. So I had full faith in my team at home that there was no crisis. There was nothing that was going to happen that they had to call me about, that, well, this tenant did this or this tenant did that required a whole bunch of attention. Now, I was able to check in on our property management software, and get the dashboard look of, okay, is there a problem with somebody's tenant payments? Is there this or that? And they could shoot me updates as needed, but it wasn't as though I had to engage for a lot of time. But 7-8 years ago, I would find myself sometimes for a few hours a day on vacation. I'd get up before the family or stay up late, and I would, I'd spend a lot of time working on the business. So I think the power of getting the right team in place almost takes you, I don't say it makes you less important. It just allows you to work on the things you're really good at. And for me, I found I love doing deals. I love, I love building the business, but there's people that are like way better at like systematizing all this, all the potential messes that I create by adding more property. So, so you have to have faith in people and get people that are like, for me, we're growing. So you want people that are growth oriented, positive minded, like people that are not afraid to challenge the status quo, but they know their role. They're not going to, they're not going to disrespect you, but they, like they're going to have a free flow of ideas, and you're going to allow that so you can drive your business forward.
Sure.
But I think that's important, even if you're looking to buy your first property. I mean, if you have your own little group of friends or mentors that you look up to in the business, like having people that can encourage you along the way, but also challenge your assumptions and maybe make you think differently about the business.
Sure. Do you self-manage all of your units then?
Sure do. The first several years, my wife and I did it all ourselves. And she'll tell you, I'll tell you too, I was a terrible painter. Like, you don't want me painting an apartment, but we would paint, we would clean, we would do all that stuff. And she's good at a lot of that. I mean, she's the handy one, still is. But we went from like 0 to 23 units from 01 to 05. And then in 05, I bought a 56 unit portfolio. And with that came a maintenance guy. And then the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh wow, this guy's taken so much off my plate. And then we got a part-time property manager, and we just sort of started, building a team, which really allowed me to grow the business. And so that was a lot of fun. And so now, and not that all third-party managers, there's plenty of great third-party managers, but as we built this, big portfolio, I felt, I would have trouble taking like letting somebody else manage that, at least in our town, the other third-party managers don't necessarily own their own units. Mm-hmm. So I just, philosophically, I had a problem with that. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just a hurdle that I couldn't get over. So now we've built we've built an animal where we have, a whole crew of maintenance personnel, office staff, leasing agents that rely on this for their livelihood. So we feel good about that, and we want to continue to grow that. And I think they do a fantastic job. So it's not always been that way. I mean, I think it's almost easier to hire to do a deal than it is to build a culture and build a company. We really struggled with that for a long time, and I think that I'm very proud to say that I think I've got probably the best it's ever been in terms of we've got great people that are from all sides of it, but we've spent a lot of time in learning how to attract and hire and retain quality employees. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about that, because a lot of people will, buy that first 1 or 2 or 3 properties. They'll self-manage them. At a certain point, though, it becomes a little too much for them. So then they offload it to a third-party property manager. But I'm seeing more and more larger companies now basically becoming. So I was wondering, where was that tipping point? But you said your tipping point really kind of happened naturally with the acquisition and getting a handyman going.
Yeah. And I think, some of my friends that I met through some various masterminds and boot camps and things like that, some of them had, all they do is syndicate. They don't have anything they own. And they're also, own these things remotely. They might live in Texas and own something in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But I've seen it time and time again where a lot of them have had challenges with the third-party management. They underwrite a deal and make certain assumptions one way, but when the rubber hits the road and reality strikes, the properties may run a different way under a certain management. So I've seen a handful of them either buy a property management company and then, then they can control it, or they've bought enough in one market where they can build their own. And that seems to be going a lot better for them. So I don't, I've always said everybody who can self-manage should. I don't want to speak at an absolute because it's not always right for everybody, but from just my unscientific approach and the data, I think that, if you have the patience to be able to, hire good people and incentivize them and build a system, self-management can leave more money on the table for you as an owner. Mm-hmm. But it's hard, if you have 10 or 20 units, it is hard because it is a time suck at times. And so that's where I think that grind comes in. So you have to be willing to kind of keep the faith and really decide what you want out of it. That at that point, you may say, hey, I have to grow big enough so I can get that first employee, or I got to grow big enough to take the nice chunk to a third party manager.
So do you have some tips for people that if they do want to self-manage that first, let's say they have 10, 12 units, because again, you're one person, you're trying to do all of this. Many of the people that we talk to also have a full-time job.
Yeah.
it makes it difficult. I was chatting with somebody the other day that they use some online software like Cozy or what have you, and when they get um, a request for a repair or something, they essentially call a handyman, and they put key code locks on all of their properties so that they can just pass on the key code, send the repairman in directly, so they can do most of what they need to just via phone.
Right. Right. And that's true. I think I see that a lot with like newer investors where if you buy, it's your first property, why not just put on a key code, right? And try and make everything automated. And you hit on it too. I mean, if they have the property management software, that's really something that, we did it old school for a long time, and probably way longer than we needed to, but it used to be pen and paper, Excel spreadsheets, just
right.
It was nonsense. And I would say, with the technology we have now, just, some of the big property management software platforms don't allow you to subscribe until you have hit a certain unit count. But like Cozy, and I think there's some others that are free or relatively low cost that, invest in that. Also, attend local meetups or RIAs, find other landlords that do it. I mean, some of my best mentors earlier on were guys that just maybe had 20, 30, 50 units that, had been doing it for 10, 20 years, that could give me advice on, well, here's how you screen your tenants properly. Here's how you deal with this type of maintenance issue. And so, you need people like that to kind of coach you along, because a lot of this is, when you're first starting out, there's going to be new situations nonstop. I mean, we've been doing this 19 years and there's still something every week that surprises us, be it from a tenant or maintenance or whatever the case may be. So if there's a local meetup, a RIA, ours, it's a landlord association. It took me a few years, but I joined that. I've been president for the last few years of the organization. We have 1,400 members, but invaluable resources, where they can provide you with a lease and certain forms and documents and, legal support if you need it, if you're going through an eviction or something like that, or have a tough tenant question. So I just think, trying to not go it alone. There's so many new investors that say, well, I don't really need to join. I don't think I have the time, but it can be, that having that support just makes it that much easier. So you don't give up and you don't get, like when you get these frustrations, you can break through those, quicker. But it can also be a great source of deals. You might meet people that it becomes a mentor today, and then in 5 years decides he wants to sell his property, and you're the first person they think of.
Mm-hmm. So, since you brought that up, you've had almost 20 years of pretty steady success. I mean, you especially even in those markets, 9/11, 2008, and it sounds like you've had a pretty steady progression here. What would you attribute to that long-term success, and how much was mentorship a part of that?
I think one of the things with long-term success is that we just failed enough and never gave up. So it's not always been like, sunshine and roses. I mean, there's a lot of days where you're like, man, why am I doing this? Like, none of my tenants are paying rent. I've got so many maintenance. How am I going to make this work? But you get those challenges and take it back to your why. Why did I get in this business in the first place? What was the purpose? And I mean, it can be frustrating. There's no doubt about that. And we still hit, you still can hit roadblocks and still hit, different things that you need to kind of work through. But so one of those things was just not giving up. I just wanted this bad enough that the times where it was challenging, that we just kept going and kept working and trying to better yourself and work on yourself. And then as I started growing, I would actively, at the time I didn't really think of it as a mentor-mentee relationship, but now I do. And I seek out mentors and friends in the business and people that I, it's not just a one-way relationship, people that you can also add value to. And so whether that's, getting a coach, joining a mastermind, creating a mastermind, or just finding the old dogs that have been doing this for 20, 30 years and taking them out for a cup of coffee or a beer or something and just wanting to pick their brain and talk shop. And I think, real estate seems to be a very giving industry for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't want to give away their secrets and they have no interest in helping out new investors. But I just see it, you go to these conferences and there's people that have been doing it for 40 years and they're more than willing to sit down and talk with a brand newbie. And You know, and because there's always, you know, they knew that when they started out, there was somebody that helped them along. And I think that's just not really talked about enough, that people are so afraid to call that guy that has, you know, 500 homes. You know, they're intimidated by that, but you know, you'd be shocked at how easy it is for people to, you know, just to reach out and take 15, 20 minutes of somebody's time. And, you know, I mean, nobody wants like somebody who's going to like, you know, kind of nag them all the time, but you know, you can build some really solid friendships and relationships in this business just by reaching out.
Yeah. So you know, with that, you know, I found it's so important to be around those like-minded people just to help you stay motivated. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because like you said, you gotta, there's going to be some ups and downs, and you're frankly a little delusional if you don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
How do you keep in that positive mindset and keep that motivation going?
Yeah. So you know, I joined a mastermind a couple years ago. So has real estate investors, peers from all across the country. Meets, you know, 3 times a year. That's been invaluable. I mean, you just meet people that are, you know, some you might be a little bit ahead on, some maybe a little bit behind, but there's this collective caring and interest in helping everybody succeed. So that's one thing. The other thing, you know, locally, I have a couple peers in the business that, you know, we get together a handful of times a year, and you know, we'll grab dinner, or we'll go for beers, or we'll sit at one of our offices and just grab a pizza, and you know, we talk about what we're up to and what we need help with. And it's crazy as it sounds. I mean, the first time, you know, if you find that sort of tribe of people that, you know, are maybe a little bit ahead, maybe a little bit behind where you're at, but you build those friendships, everybody's invested in your success. And, you know, sometimes just somebody saying the same thing a little differently than you've heard it 1,000 times before, that causes you to think about a situation differently, or causes you to jump to action. So, you know, I try to spend, you know, it's not an inordinate amount of time. I mean, some people are seminar junkies and they're always traveling I can't do that. I have a business to run. I've got a wife and kids, and I have a social life. You know, I can't go to conferences like every month, or, you know, let alone, you know, even too many times a year. But try to pick some, you know, try to pick 1 or 2 events a year that, you know, you can network and meet people, maybe learn a few things. But even locally, if you can't travel and get away, just meeting other people that are in the business and becoming friends with them, and be surprised at how fast those relationships build, but how fast your own development occurs just by trying to make, you know, because a lot of people are in the same boat. You know, you might have 5 units and meet somebody else who has 5 or 10 units, and you're both trying to build your portfolios and you know, and leave your day jobs, and be amazing, you know, be amazed at like what people like that can learn from each other, and then just double or triple their business in a shorter amount of time.
Sure. So, you know, in your market, I find this really fascinating that you've done most of this in your backyard, like you have. Because most indications and most people seem to feel like they have to spread themselves thin across the whole US or even other parts of the world to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and the benefits, the drawbacks,
Well, the benefit, on one hand, is the drawback is that you're close to everything. So,
yeah.
But
You have a tendency of wanting to drive by and check things out?
that's okay. I mean, but you have to learn to embrace that, right? If something's not right, then you need to address it and handle it and move on. But, you know, when we started out, I didn't know any differently. I bought a duplex. The next year it was a 4-unit, the next, you know, and then a 2-unit, and then a 7-unit and a 4-unit. And it was just, I didn't know any differently. I didn't think like, well, why would I go buy something, you know, in Chicago when I can buy property in Erie at a relatively affordable rate that cash flows? And so the people I knew and saw what they were doing, they were just buying in Erie. And then as we grew, there's still opportunity. I mean, we're potentially running out of opportunity on the types of property that we want to buy. So I know what market we're going to move into when we do move out of Erie. But, you know, to invest in your own backyard, I mean, with or without investors, you know, the thing is, if something goes wrong, I mean, maybe you third party manage, but if they're not doing their job and you have to get your hands dirty, at least you live relatively close to your property.
Right.
You know, if I'm buying property in North Dakota, chances are I'm not going to drive there to like take care of, you know,
Right.
tenant issue or something like that. So, there's that benefit. The other side is if you're local, then, you just try to make sure the tenants don't have your home address or anything like that, because you don't want people showing up to your house and paying rent. And,
Right.
or in this day and age, if somebody's, going to go postal, you don't want anybody, going crazy. But I think, I think it's not that it's the only way. I mean, plenty of people are uber successful investing across the country, especially in the syndication model. But I think that if you live in an area that can allow you to have cash flow properties, investing in your own backyard is great. I mean, it doesn't apply to somebody living in San Francisco, to invest in their own backyard. So they may have to pick a market they like. But at the end of the day, especially in these like crazy times, people will say, well, how's your real estate doing it? Well, it's fine. We have people that are paying rent, and see how that goes in the next couple of months. I mean, if people have to like stay home and aren't getting paychecks, that could pose some challenges, certain areas of the country. But it's, at least the values are there. That doesn't fluctuate. Usually, if you have a paying customer like a tenant, they need a place to live. That usually becomes the priority for in terms of their bills and what they need to pay. So again, that's just one of the other benefits of investing in real estate. But if you live close to it, you've just got a better control and better handle on the situation.
So now that you've grown to the size that you have, can you give us a snapshot of what your typical day looks like?
Yeah. So I kind of balance it with doing what I want to do and sort of doing what I have to do. But what I have to do, I enjoy, and that's sort of how I design my life and business. But a general weekday, get up, get my kids to school. I will go to the office and check in with all my managers and just to make sure that is there anything I need to be aware of, what's going on. So I usually kind of have a huddle with them for 15 to 30 minutes. And then I go to the gym and I work on myself, and I try to be healthy, and so I spend a few hours at the gym. And then I'll usually have a series of meetings when I leave the gym, say at 10:30 or 11, and I'll, through the rest of the day, I'll have like a lunch meeting, or I'll have meetings with potential investors. I'll be sourcing deals, whatever the case is. I'll be working on doing deals, and then working on the business and figuring out ways that we can be more efficient at what we do. So it's taken me a long time to get there, but when I have my my accountant / bookkeeper running reports for me and being able to help me analyze properties and groups of properties in a certain way, so then come back to the afternoon, I'll spend half hour to an hour with my team getting the reports, and I can spend my time analyzing reports and data. Excuse me. I'll usually pick up my kids from school, and then or if they have practice or something like that, I'll work into the evening hours. But it's around dinner and things like that. If we're sitting in front of the TV, I can watch a game, or I can watch a TV show, and I can analyze what I need to and kind of create our punch list or to-do list of the next things, whether it's in terms of an acquisition or just in terms of making our own operations a little bit better. So sounds pretty easy now, because I don't have to like be in it every minute. Just let the hire the people, get the people that can do it better than I can, and let them run with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds it's a better situation anyway, because you mentioned you don't want to be the one painting the units anymore, right?
That's right. Not the best. It's not the best use of your time.
No, and we've Josh and I have chatted about this many times before. Focusing on your skills and getting people in place and becoming part of your team that not only do those other jobs well, but they actually enjoy doing them is far more powerful than you trying to deal with it yourself. Exactly.
Like some people love paperwork, and I don't. My desk before would be piles and piles of files and paperwork. And I'm proud to say I don't have any of that anymore, because I have people that really actually enjoy like filing papers and being organized and having everything into a system. Yeah. And sometimes that's what people are born to do. So if you find yourself in that situation where there's all this stuff that's out of control, like hire somebody to do that, get it off your plate and move on. Right. So, well, it looks like we went a little bit over than what I promised that I was going to keep you to. But was there any question or anything that you wanted to cover that I didn't ask about? No, I really enjoyed our conversation. I appreciate you having me on, and I hope your listeners got some value out of it. And, and if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out. Yeah. Where would people, if they wanted to get in touch, how would they get a hold of you? Sure. They can reach me on email. It's just my name, first name, last name, jasonperro@yahoo.com. They can connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook as well. And I will take some 15-minute strategy calls if anybody just wants to hop on and have a quick phone call. They can schedule with me on calendly.com/Jason Perro.
So, well, I really appreciate your time. This was a great conversation, and thank you again. I hope we can do it again.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend and
Yeah,
stay
you
safe.
too.